So our parasha is Parashat Mishpatim. Last week we learned about Parashat Yitro, the 10 Commandments, all whatever happened in Sinai Mountain, and all the different details. And now we're coming to a very special parasha. Before we go into the parasha, let's just bring a few very special, incredible facts that we have specifically this year, Tafshin Pei Aleph 2021, on this Shabbat. So usually, there is one time during the year that we take out 3 Sifrei Torah. That time is Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah, at the end of Sukkot, we have Simchat Torah. We take out the first Torah to finish the Torah, the second Torah to start Bereshit, and the third Torah for Maftir. The second time that we can have, doesn't have to happen every year, but there are some years that it can happen, is on Chanukah. If Rosh Chodesh Shvat comes out on Shabbat Chanukah, then we take out 3 Sifrei Torah, the first one for the Parashat Shavua, the second one for Rosh Chodesh, and the third one for Chanukah. And here we're coming for this year, we have another time that we take out the Sefer Torah, 3 Sifrei Torah, and it is our Shabbat. Our Shabbat, as we all know, tonight is Rosh Chodesh Adar, so also have a Chodesh Tov, Mishenichnas Adar, Marbim Besimcha. When Adar enters, we should be even more happy. So I hope you all open your schnapps and whiskey closet to start preparing for Purim, start drinking, and bring more happiness in our lives, especially in this month. And in this Shabbat, how do we know we're starting to get closer to Purim? Because we have an additional parasha. So we have our regular parasha, it's Parashat Mishpatim. We have Rosh Chodesh, because tonight, tomorrow, and also on Shabbat is Rosh Chodesh, and the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Adar. Or if Rosh Chodesh Adar comes out on Shabbat, just like this year, then we read Parashat Shekalim, Shabbat Shekalim, that we're gonna say a few words about it towards the end of the shiur. So that brings us to our 3 Sifrei Torah this Shabbat. So very good advice to come to shul. See, it doesn't happen every Shabbat or not even every few months. And that is something incredible about our specific Shabbat. In our Parashat Mishpatim, we have a lot of laws. And I'll tell you now, we're not going to go through all of them. Because if we wanted to go through all of them with the details and the halachot and all that, we can sit here for days and weeks and years to learn all the laws of all the different halachot that we have, different mitzvot that we have in our parasha. We all know we have 613 mitzvot in the Torah. In our parasha, we have 23 mitzvot aseh, which means mitzvot, doing mitzvot, and 30 mitzvot lo ta'aseh. Altogether, we have 53 mitzvot in our parasha. So of course, as we said, we're not going to go through all of them. Some we'll mention, some we won't mention, some will go into a little more details, some will just mention it and just skip by, and at the end, go into details of a few of them and the shiur. The parasha starts with a very interesting letter. And why letter and not word? I mean, what's a letter? A letter in the Torah. Okay, well, we have a lot of letters in the Torah. But no, our parasha starts with something very different. Ve'ele hamishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. The vav, the first vav in our parasha gives us a whole, if you look at Rashi, Rashi is very long and all the explanations there are very long only on this small letter. Just one line in the Torah, a vav. And what's so special about this? Because the Rashi says that if it would have started Ele HaMishpatim, these are the laws, Asher Tasim Lifnehem, that Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu to put in front of Am Yisrael. If he says these are the laws, Rashi says that means you're canceling whatever was beforehand. What was beforehand? Beforehand, we had the laws, we had the 10 Commandments, we finished the last week's parasha with the Mizbeach, with the altar in Bet HaMikdash, and If you say these are the laws, that means whatever you read until now, that's nothing. Erase it, cancel it, put it on the side, start from scratch. When the parasha says ve'ele, and these are the laws, it's not coming to cancel, but it's coming to add over on whatever we started in last week's parasha. Ma'ele ne'emru b'Sinai, af ele ne'emru b'Sinai. Just last week's parasha, we read that the 10 commandments were said in the Sinai mountain. Same idea, whatever we have in our parasha, all the laws we have a parasha, and of course, in the whole Torah, were also said on Sinai mountain. And we can say that a lot of the laws in our parasha don't belong or aren't for the personal person to have the laws for himself. And what does that mean? A lot of the laws that if you read the Torah, if you read the parasha, it belongs to a Beit Din, to the Jewish court that we have a Beit Din. We know we have a Beit Din of 3 that can give a din on dinei mamonot about money-wise, but we have another 2 more different Batei Dinim. We have a Beit Din of 23, which they have more power to judge on a higher level, And then, of course, we have the Sanhedrin that sat next in Beit HaMikdash, which had 71 Chachamim, 71 Rabbanim in that. And that is one of the reasons that Parashat Mishpatim came right after the end of last week's Parsha. As we said, last week's Parsha ended with the altar, with the Mizbech. And why did Parashat Mishpatim come right after? To tell us that it's one of the mitzvot is to seat the Dayanim, the Sanhedrin, the 71 Chachamim near the Mizbech and Beit HaMikdash. They would have their room right near the Beit HaMikdash on Har HaBayit. They would sit, the 71 Sanhedrin would sit in a half a circle, and they would decide on different laws that were brought for them, also from Beit HaMikdash and also from the rest of the nation. And let's start going through our parasha. As we said, we're not going to go through all the laws because it's a lot, and you can read it at your own time tomorrow on Shabbat in Hebrew and English and see how many laws we have there. But we will, in our shiur tonight, we'll just say a few of them and go into some of them. One of them is V'chi yakeh ish, makeh ish vamet mot yumat, a person that hit someone else and that person died. The person that hit him, the killer, he needs to be killed. And who does he need to be killed by? And this is a general statement for all the times that it says mot yumat, that this person has to die, this person in this action. We'll see few more examples just in a few minutes. All of these, it's not a regular person. It's not that if I see someone going and killing someone else, then I need to go and kill him. No. A person is not allowed to judge someone else by himself. That's why we have the Beit Din. And it says, the Talmud says that the Torah gives a lot of different harsh punishments. If someone did this and this, he needs to be killed. And what kind of killing? That also has a lot of laws in the Torah. But the Talmud says that if a Beit Din would judge someone and decide that this person needs to be killed once every 7 years, and there are some that say once every 70 years, that Beit Din is called a murder. Now, why is it called a murder? They're doing the Torah. We're going to see that these are the laws of the Torah. They try the most because there are so many different details that need to be attached and detached and be seen and be heard and being in the exact place and very detailed, that the Beit Din, the majority of the time, that would not be the punishment. They would find some other punishment, and the punishment of the killing, of the executing, would not happen because they didn't have all the things they needed in front of them. Another law that is brought down in the continuation of the parasha, we have makeh aviv ve'imo mot yumat, a person that he hits his father or mother, also that child, the Beit Din needs to execute him. Mekalel aviv ve'imo, a curse, a child that curses his parents, Also, those cases, mot yumat, and all of these are a lot of details. We can't just say that, we can't just take the Torah and say, oh, my son cursed me when he was a 5-year-old. He needs to be killed. No. Let's take a step back. The Torah is the Torah is very few sentences, right? We go over it only once a year, but it's very few sentences, very few words. There are full books and sages that wrote so many laws about very few letters, just like we saw at the beginning of the Parashat. It started with a Vav, and so much was written only on this Vav. And we also mentioned in last week that it's not enough to take the Torah shebichtav. We also have Torah sheba'al peh, and just for like one example, where it says, Makeh ish vamet mot yumat. Specifically, if a person killed an ish. So how do we, a ish is a man. How do we know that also a woman or a child, if someone killed a child, he also gets a punishment? Then the explanations, they say, we learn it from a different place. And from that place, also, if someone kills a woman, also if someone kills a child, he gets the punishment. So this is just one example that we would think, oh, only if he kills an older man over the age of 13? No. We have a different place that says something else. We have the explanations to explain to us what does the word ish mean? What does the word makeh? Makeh means just hitting. And if I didn't kill that person, does that mean I still need to get killed? No. Again, all of these details, we can't just understand the Torah without looking at the details, without looking at the oral Torah with all the explanations from Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe Rabbeinu, will see at the end of the parasha that he learned all of the Torah. He passed it down, and that's what we have today. Another law that we have in our parasha is Mechashefa lo techayeh. Mechashefa is a witch, and it's a mitzvah on the Beit Din that if someone says there's a Mechashefa, there's a witch, then it's on their power to go, and they have to go and give her the punishment of lo techayeh. Also here, execute her. It doesn't say mot yumat, so it's a different execution, but also an execute. And why? Why mechashefa lo techayeh? What is so bad about a witch? And maybe is there a problem to go to these kind of people today that you go to them, they look at your hand, they look at your face, they look at your body, and they decide you need to do this, you're not allowed to do this, you need to eat this, you need to behave like this, and that's what has to be done. Are we allowed to go to those kind of people? Are those considered as the in the Torah mechashefa lo techayeh? And the reason of this mechashefa, of this witch, that the Torah is being so harsh with her or him, the reason for that is that Hashem created the world with a nature. And Hashem knows the best for the human beings how to control the world, how they themselves should control the world. And if someone will come and try to change the nature of the world, the way that Hashem wants to control the world, then only negative things can come out of that. And what do we mean negative things? We could give an example. If we take two kinds of seeds, and one of the, we have a sin of like that in the Torah, shatnez, okay? Or we have shatnez, or to take two types of seeds and to grow them together, two plants and to grow them together, then what will come out of here? It's two different things. So we have two choices. One of the choices is they'll come out of A, like A. The other choice, they'll come out of B. There's a third choice that something new completely will come out. But that thing was never created. That thing was never created by Hashem. The person that created that is the human being that came and did something wrong and put two different things together, and something else was created. And why did he do that? Because he thinks that we need to create new things. Whatever Hashem created is not enough. And that's the reason for this mechashefa, for this witch. The purpose and the power of these people that want to change the nature that Hashem created is that we say what Hashem created is not enough. What Hashem created, we need something else, not something additional, something else completely. We want to change it. And that's why it's such a horrible thing of these witches, of these people that want to change, want to switch our nature in this world and to do something else completely that wasn't created beforehand, but they themselves think that that is better. And when we'll see that also in another mitzvah in our parasha, that if we put two things together, that just brings negative things. That's why the Torah is so harsh about this mechashefa, about this witch, that the reason is because it changes and we don't trust Hashem and whatever He created. So then we come back to the question, so can I go to some kind of witch and she will tell me or he will tell me to go and change my nature, to change my whole life around? There is an halachic question about that. There are different answers about that. But the general answer is that we need to trust in Hashem. Hashem gave us so many good things in our world. We say brachot before food. We say brachot after food. We enjoy this world. That's why Hashem created this world, to enjoy it. But we need to make sure that we enjoy this world the way that Hashem gave it to us, and not trying to be smarter than Hashem and try changing things. It's like a mechanic that he invented something and someone else will come and say, no, that's not good. Let's change it completely and it'll work the same. But who can be smarter of this specific mechanic that he specific invented something new? The same idea, Hashem. Hashem created the world. Hashem created the world in a very specific way that He knows that that is the best way that can be. Yes, there could be more ways in the world that other people will invent, but the way and the best way is from the Creator, and that's what we need to trust. That's how we need to go. That's how we need to behave from the nature that Hashem gave us, the human beings, and specifically the Jewish people in this world. Continuing with another caring mitzvah, kol almana ve'yatom lo te'anun. We need to care for the widows and for the children that lost their parents, and not to torture them. And why not to torture them? Rashi brings down because these people, these specific people, are on a lower level. They're weak, and it's very easy just to forget about them. So the Torah brings down a mitzvah specific to care about them, and someone that tortures them because they're so weak, he will get the punishment. Not just he, the Torah tells us, but also his wife and also his children that go over the sin of te'anun, of torturing these widows and the children. Then he will get his punishment from Hashem. You can see in Rashi, you could look in Rashi over there in the Torah, and he tells us what Hashem could give the punishment. And going to Kol Almana, we have another mitzvah, Im kesef talve et ami, et he'ani imach, lo tiye lo kenoshe. Mitzvah tzedakah. Mitzvah to lend to people money that they need, to there's someone that doesn't have money, to lend him money. And Rashi brings down, Rabbi Ishmael says that every place that it says im in the Torah, the word im, which means if you want to do it, then you can do it. But if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. You won't get a punishment, but if you do it, you will get reward. So every single im that says in the Torah, it's if you want to do it. It's your personal idea, except for three. That when it says im in these three, then Rabbi Ishmael says that it's not only if, but it's a requirement. And one of them is in our parasha, im kesef talve et ami et ha'ani imach lo tiye lo kenoshe, to lend to other people that need the money. The next, another mitzvah that we have, Elohim lo tekalel. Now, when it says Elohim in the Torah, or when we say Elohim, we always think about Hashem. That is one of Hashem's name, Elohim. But the Torah here and also here bring another example of the power of the oral Torah that comes and teaches us no. Where it says Elohim lo tekalel, it does not refer to Hashem. It does not refer to Hashem in this specific place. In our case, it refers to the Dayanim, to the judges that are sitting in the Beit Din. They are also called Elohim. What does the word Elohim mean? Every morning, one of the halachot in the Shulchan Aruch says that every time we say Hashem's name, we need to understand what we're saying. And Hashem has 7 different names. So every time we say Adnut, right? That's how we read Adnut. So we need to have the mind Shehu Adon Hakol, that he is in charge of everything. And every time we say Havaya, right? From when we have a Yud and a Hey and then a Vav and then a Hey, then we need to think that Hu Haya Hoveh V'Hiyeh, he was in the past, he's in the present, and he is in the future. And also Elokim, Shu Takif Uva La Yecholet. This the explanation of the word Elokim is that he has power. And of course, Hashem has power. But Hashem also gave the power to specific people. And we'll see also at the end, to Dayanim, to a Beit Din. And that's why when it says in the Torah, Elohim lo tekalel, that refers to a Beit Din, that we're not allowed to curse the Beit Din that we have. Another mitzvah that we have is lo tisa shem hashav, not to hear lashon hara, not to speak lashon hara, bad tongue, bad mouthing about other people, a very, very hard law. And from the Torah that we have a lot of different difficulties to go through them. Because lashon hara, we speak to someone and without realizing we're speaking about someone else, and right away we go over the sin of lashon hara. So that's also in our parasha to be careful of lashon hara. Another one is to help an animal. If you see an animal being tortured and he has too much on him, you need to go help him. Also, if that animal belongs to your friend that you hate, to your hate, you still need to go help the animal, because the Torah is referring here to the animal, to be careful of the animal, and not specifically to the person that you hate. Another law that we have is, we'll speak about the last 3 ones. Lo tevashel gdi b'chalev imo, not to cook meat with milk. And it's not just cooking. The Torah brings it 3 times in 3 different places. One of them is in our parasha, 1 for eating, 1 for cooking, and 1 for enjoyment. What is enjoyment? Even if it was made, you're not allowed to give it to your dog or something like that, because that means you're enjoying by giving it to a dog. And why? Why do we have this issur of not cooking or not enjoying or not eating meat with milk? And this goes back to what we spoke about the witch. There are things that if we put them together and they're not supposed to be together, they weren't intended to be together, Hashem didn't plan to bring them together, then only negative things can come out of it. And even though in this case, that one of the sins is not even to cook it, we're not even eating it. We're not talking about eating. Eating is also, if someone eats it, then he goes over 2 sins. But even cooking it, also then that brings down negative things. And one of the things that Hashem didn't give specifically the reason why it's not, what does it bring out the negative things, is because the Sefer HaChinuch brings down that there are things that if the Torah would have brought down the reasons, then they would bring generations later some smart alecks and say, no, the Torah was speaking specifically about this kind of person, specifically about this kind of place, specifically about this kind of time in the history, but in a different time in the year 2021, no, that's not, it doesn't refer to us. And then people will listen to these smart people that, oh, maybe they're right. It was what the Torah was given 3,300 years ago doesn't refer to us. That's why in some laws, Hashem didn't give the reason to say that has no matter. It has no difference of who, where, when, and why. It's not allowed, so it's not allowed. Yes, there are reasons. Yes, we need to learn the reasons. We can't go into them right now because we don't have too much time. But as we said, we have the oral Torah. We have all the explanations on the Torah, lots and lots of different Rishonim and Achonim from different generations, which tell us the reasons, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and why and when. The parasha towards the end ends without making peace with the 7 nations that were in Am Yisrael before Yehoshua entered Am Yisrael with the Jewish nation and went to conquer them. We're not allowed to make any peace with them. We're not allowed to let them sit in the land of Israel. And also every other nation that they worship their own idols, that they worship idols, also those nations are not allowed to sit in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael belongs to Am Yisrael and only to Am Yisrael, and no other nation, if they worship different idols, are allowed to sit there. Other nations, except for the 7 nations that they don't worship idols, then there are different laws of making peace and all of those. Why is that? The reason for that, because if they worship other idols, and a Jewish person will see them and say, oh, that's such a wonderful thing they do in wherever they do it, he'll go and join them. And he will go over one of the 3 horrible sins that we have in the Torah. And we can see that if you look from time to time, often or not often, in some ideas that are given down in the state of Israel. There's some stories that Arabs are common around Israelis, and not once, not twice, can hear stories that happen, stories that are now also to good families, that the Arab boys go and get attached to a young Jewish girl. And at the beginning, they're very friendly, they're very nice, they're very loving, they give them gifts, they buy them different things. And slowly after the girl was bought by this Arab, then she goes and lives with him. And it can happen also for very Jewish families, very religious families. It can happen to for our sadness, but it happens. And then after a few years, suddenly they see how much she was lied to. Suddenly the Arab starts torturing her, doesn't let her to leave the house. She becomes a servant in the house and not a wife. And then there are different operations. There are different people in the state of Israel that have their kind of a group that they go and they release this woman, sometimes with children, and bring her back to a house of Judaism. And if it would happen the opposite, that if an Arab girl would marry a Jewish person, you know what they would do to their in their village? Right away, they would kill this Arab girl. Kill her, mamash, kill her, this Arab girl. But Am Yisrael will always bring back their children. But we need to be careful of who we let to sit in the state of Israel, in Eretz Yisrael. People that we only have real peace with them. Because one of the sins is not to marry their other nations. And that's why it's very important that we don't, the Torah says not to make peace with other nations that worship different idols and that they have, that they live and worship different idols. That is overall of our parasha. And we started with the judgment with the holy Beit Din and Dayanim. And what's so special about that? The parasha actually ends with Moshe Rabbeinu and Am Yisrael saying Na'aseh v'nishma, and Moshe Rabbeinu going up, receiving the 10 commandments and going up for 40 days and 40 nights. Then you can ask, wait, but we read that last week. Why is it coming right only now? Rashi says, En mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah. Even though something is written after a specific thing, it doesn't mean that it can't come beforehand. There's no later or earlier in the Torah. So our parasha actually ends, but it's really before the 10 commandments that we read last week. The reason that Mishpatim, all these different laws that were given to the Dayanim, to the Beit Din, the Jewish law, in the middle of the 10 commandments and going back before the 10 commandments, is to show us that this isn't stam. This isn't for no reason. The Mishpatim are on the same level as the 10 Commandments. They are all given in Har Sinai, like we said at the beginning, and not that they were given, they are also on the same level. Because when we have 3 Dayanim sitting down together, Shechina benehem, they have Hashem's will on them. And also it says, Kol hadan dayan din emet le'amito. They are a person that he judges another person with by Hashem's laws. He is part. He is part of the creation of the world with Hashem. And why is that? Because the Torah gave power to the Dayanim to decide with the laws of the Torah what is allowed, what is not allowed, to judge the people. And when they judge them, then they also add on this creation, on this world, the law from the Torah was specific to this story or this thing that came in front of them. And that's why it's such a holy thing of if someone has a problem with a neighbor, definitely go to a Beit Din, because other civil courts, they can think, oh, this is a widow, let's give rachmanut, let's have mercy on her, or this is someone poor, that's not him, let's let him not pay this other person that is rich, even though he should pay him. The Torah is not like that. The Torah takes every single thing, every single matter into consideration and is always brought down by the law of the Torah. And also, I could give you a story from where I lived in Israel, in Kiryat Arba, that there was an Arab that was building someone's apartment in Kiryat Arba, a Jewish apartment, and they got to some kind of problem with the payment. And the owner of the apartment, the Jewish person, said, okay, let's go to the civil court and let's see who's correct. And what did the Arab say? No. Let's go to your court, to the Jewish court, to the Beit Din in your city. And they went to the Beit Din in Kiryat Arba with the 3 Dayanim. And the Dayanim, who did they go with? They said that the Arab is correct. But wait, how? You have a Jewish standing in front of you? No. We have the Torah standing in front of us. The Torah is the one that decides. And in that case, they really put the Arab that was correct in front, and the other one needed to pay, and whatever was the story was there. So we see that going by the Torah cannot change our mind, because that is the correct way to go. Going to the 10 Commandments, and before Am Yisrael received the 10 Commandments, they said Na'aseh v'nishma, and it's written down again in our Parashat at the end, Na'aseh l'nishma. And we learned last week that the Midrash brings down that Hashem needed to put over the mountain, flip the mountain over Am Yisrael and force them to receive the Torah. And said, if you receive the Torah, excellent. But if not, this will be your burial place. So in that case, Am Yisrael received it with no will. But Am Yisrael did say something with a will. And that is Na'aseh v'nishma. They first said Na'aseh. They first said, we will do, and then we will listen. And at that time, such a high level, the Midrash says, at the time that Am Yisrael first said, we will do, and then we will listen, came 600,000 angels of Hashem, and came and tied on each one and one of Am Yisrael 2 crowns, 1 crown for Na'aseh and 1 crown for Nishma. And another Midrash says, Yatzta bat kol, a voice from heaven came out and said, Mi gila lebanai razeh shemalachei hasharet mishtamshim. Who came and taught Am Yisrael this amazing language that only the angels use them in the heavens. We see here that when Am Yisrael said Na'aseh l'nishma, it wasn't Hashem forcing them. It wasn't Moshe forcing them. They themselves got to such a high level of Na'aseh l'nishma that they were just like the angels and the heaven. And when they said that, the B'sha'a she'amru zot karat aleim bni bechori Yisrael. These are my children. When they said Na'aseh l'nishma, that was 100% Hashem decided, These are the one that I want them. These are my children. These are my this is my chosen nation. And that was the highest level that they got into when at this whole while they were standing on Sinai mountain. And this teaches us that they should have said, Nishma v'naseh, let's first listen and then hear. But they started from such a high level. Yes, we will do it. Doesn't matter what it says in it, we will do it. And then they got down to a lower level and said Nishma. And that teaches us that also sometimes when we worship Hashem in our life, not just in davening, but every single second of our day, sometimes we feel more connected to Hashem. Sometimes there are times that we feel more connected to Hashem, and sometimes there are times that we feel less connected to Hashem. But just like Malachei Sharet, just like the angels, that they're always connected to Hashem, such like Am Yisrael, that they are always connected to Hashem. And we will end with the Dalet Parshiot that we started at the beginning, that the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Adar, or in this case, Shabbat of Rosh Chodesh Adar, we read Parashat Shekalim. And then next week, the Shabbat before Purim, we read Parashat Zachor. The Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we read Parashat Para. And the Shabbat after we read Parashat Para. And the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we read Parashat HaChodesh. All of these parshiyot are in order to remember different things. When we get to each week, we're going to speak on that week. Today, we'll just end in the last few minutes with Parashat Shekalim, which means money. And what is Parashat Shekalim? Talks about that all of Am Yisrael need to donate machatzit hashekel, half a shekel, half of the amount of the coin that it is in their times. 3 times of a half a shekel that we learned from the psukim. We won't go into that now. So altogether, 1.5 of the amount of that coins. And all of this is to be given to Bet HaMikdash. Why? Why at the times Bet HaMikdash does each one and one need to give this machatzit hashekel? And the Greenblum brings down that every single person needs to give machatzit hashekel, and only machatzit hashekel. The richest person in the Jewish nation, he will give only machatzit hashekel. But also the poor has to give the machatzit hashekel. And everybody in between, only machatzit hashekel. Why machatzit hashekel? What's so important about this that we can't give more, we can't give less? What's so important? Next week in Parashat Truma, we're going to read Ve'asu li mikdash ve'shachanti betocham. One of the mitzvot on Am Yisrael is to build Bet HaMikdash. And when we build it, Hashem will come inside V'shachanti betocham. It should have said V'shachanti betocho in the Bet HaMikdash. But it says V'shachanti betocham, Hashem will be inside of them. And the explanation for that is inside of every single Jewish person. The way that we connect to Bet HaMikdash is by korbanot, by sacrificing. Because the word korban, sacrifice in Hebrew, is also from the word keruv, lekarev, to connect, to be closer to Hashem by giving the sacrifice. But sometimes Am Yisrael couldn't get to Bet HaMikdash and give sacrifices, or sometimes Am Yisrael weren't connected to Hashem so much for them to give the sacrifices. But once a year, Hashem tells us, before we get to Rosh Chodesh Adar, in order to see how many people we need for Korban Pesach, that we're getting closer to in just a month and a half, each one will give a machatzit hashekel. And this coin will connect Am Yisrael to Hashem, to Bet HaMikdash, to Hashem's house, to where Hashem is present. And every single person needs to be part of Bet HaMikdash. And doesn't matter if we're rich, doesn't matter if we're poor. And that's why one of the laws is only machatzit hashekel. And no matter what financial situation a person it is, because everybody at the end of the point is equal to Bet HaMikdash, is equal to Hashem. Every single Jewish person has the connection, the equal connection to Hashem. Doesn't matter what his background is, doesn't matter what he does. Yes, we need to try connecting to Hashem always by davening, by doing mitzvot, learning Torah and Ma'asim Tovim. But once a year, we gather everyone as a nation and each one gives their coin. And today that we don't have Bet HaMikdash, what do? By reading this parasha of Ki Tisa on Shabbat Shekalim, the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Adar, it doesn't bring down from its holiness. It doesn't bring down from the purpose of it, of connecting to Hashem's presence. by reading and remembering, again, remembering the mitzvah that was done in Beit HaMikdash in those times, that itself is giving us the connection to Hashem, is bringing us closer to Hashem, just like the korban would bring us closer from the word kiruv. Same idea with this coin, machatzit shekel, even though we're not giving it physically, but we definitely are remembering it and spiritually are connecting to Hashem for when we read it in the Sefer Torah in Shul. And Baruch Hashem that we have the shuls open to read these 4 parshiyot. Also this week Shabbat Shekalim, also next week's Zachor, that's from the Torah that we'll speak about next week. And every year that we get to this Shabbat, even though Beit HaMikdash was not rebuilt yet, but we still, the level of the spiritual level does not go down, does not get lower, but it stays the same, just like Beit HaMikdash was built then. As we remember it in our days, it's just like we are giving this half a coin to Beit HaMikdash and connecting to Hashem and getting closer to Hashem. So this is the parasha. We're going to end the shiur over here. If anybody has any questions, feel free. If not, you all have a Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov, and add happiness to our life, especially in this month of Chodesh Adar. Have a Shabbat Shalom.